Hello and welcome to another week of Sambo iRacing. It's week 3, season 2, 2024. We are in the Formula Vee at Winton Motor Raceway for their national layout. I have to say, this may be my favourite track for the Vee. I enjoyed testing around here so much that I actually did 3 separate sessions. All my sessions are on Garage 61. I got down from a 34.7 to a 34.4 on my first one. I then brought that down to a 34.2 and a 34 flat. And then in my final session, I was able to put in this 133.8. So I genuinely don't think I can drive this track any faster than I have done. I had so much fun doing it. If you're new to the channel, welcome. What we do is we do a run through in the cockpit where I slow it down and I show you where my braking markers are. Then we jump to the chase cam for a full speed run through where you can see whereabouts my tyres are. And then we jump back in the cockpit for a full speed run through one final time with the driving line on if you are that way inclined. So, one thing to note, I loaded this session from the Vee schedule. As you can see on the screen now, this is the way that you do it. You click on officials, you go to the Formula Vee, you click on schedule, you go down to the right race week. This is week 3 for Winton, and that is how you load in a test session. If you do it that way, and you always do it that way, it means that we're going to be comparing apples with apples, and we're always going to be on the same track at the same time with the same conditions. So, without further ado, as I cross the line, let's get in the cockpit and run through the lap. Right, before we start the lap, I'm going to point out my new widget on the left-hand side of your screen. So this is the Race Labs overlay. This is their new weather overlay, which comes in there. Now, you will see a car down at the bottom of it with an arrow. The arrow is not the wind. The arrow is pointing in the direction of where the wind is coming from. So on this example, the wind is coming from the north, which is from in front of me and off to the right. So they have made their widget act like a weather vane, so don't be thinking there's an arrow there, I'm being pushed along, I'm actually going into a headwind down this straight. Anyway, let's start the lap. So we're moving over onto the right hand side, we cross the line and we're in 4th gear, and what we're looking for is the 50-meter marker. So just as I get to the 50-meter marker, as you can see there, it's just leaving my screen and I've just started applying the brake. So I'm going to brake in a straight line, not too hard, only up to about 2/3 pressure, and I'm going to start dropping that off as I trail it off very quickly and aim towards the apex of turn 1, so through the Motorsport News S's here, and I'm just going to start building back up on the throttle, and as I do that, I'm dropping down to 3rd gear, so I'm doing basically a big blip, but it's more than a blip because I'm holding the throttle down as I'm doing that. I'm now fully on 100% throttle, and I'm quite aggressive on this opening curb because it was faster when I was doing it that way. So leaving it full throttle and then turning, leaving it still full throttle all the way through turn 2. And again, taking a load of curb there, letting the car slide out. I'm not actually hitting this rumble strip over on the left-hand side, but when I did, it didn't really slow me down. And we're looking for Honda corner, turn 3. And again, the 50-meter marker is going to be our guide here. So just as we get to the 50-meter marker, again, I'm braking hard in a straight line, well, relatively hard, 2/3 pressure. If anyone wants to know my brake bias, I'm just on the base, 67.3 for this one. It's already slidey enough without needing to kick the back end further out. So 2/3, and again, I'm trailing it off. I've got 3rd gear still selected. I'm slowly building back up on the throttle so that when I just kiss this curbing here on the right hand side, I'm fully back up to 100% to get ready for turn 4. So I aim myself fully out on the rumble strip. There's no X for this. I'm leaving it in 3rd gear, and again full throttle. Once I get to the end of the rumble strip, that's when I'm going to start my turn in for turn 4. I'm going to do a big lift down to barely nothing, so just a little bit of maintenance throttle on there. And then as I get to the apex, if you see, I'm fully back on the throttle, nice and early, making full use of the track and the rumble strip. That's going to then kick you out, but you're not going to go in the sand if you do it right. This next turn, turn 5, we're not going to touch the brakes at all. In fact, we're not going to lift here. We're going to change up to 4th gear. We're going to ignore the first apex. because I want to be further over onto the right-hand side. And then just before we get to the marshal post, if you see here, I'm doing a lift. So I'm in 4th gear doing 140 kilometers an hour. But as I get to the marshal post, I'm going to lift down to about just under half. And as the car slows down, I'm going to increase back on the throttle. But because of how underpowered the Vee is, it's not got enough oomph in 4th gear around here. So I'm back up to 100% throttle, and I'm actually going to drop it down to 3rd gear. So to show that again, and I'll show that at full speed. So as I come through, I'm in 4th gear, I do the lift, down to 3rd, go over those curbs, kiss the 2nd set of curbs. Again, I'm still in 3rd gear. And now this is the trickiest corner, I think, on iRacing at the minute for the Vee. There is no braking marker, other than maybe this seam in the road that I'm coming up to here. So once you're about 2/3 of the way across, you're wanting to really open up turn 7 for what is a really, really tricky corner. And this is the reason why you don't want to run more brake bias than I've got, or more to the rear. So just as you get over that seam and you're heading over to the rumble strip here, I'm going to come off the throttle. I'm going to brake in a straight line. So I'm still pointing to the outside of the corner as I'm braking here. And you can't start turning in at that point. So I want to trail it off so I can start turning towards the apex. As you can see, I'm really, really slowly. So when you see this at full speed and you look at the telemetry, you'll see it's a really, really long taper off on the brakes. And then just before you get to the apex, I come fully off the brakes and I start building back up on the throttle so that when I'm back up at 100% throttle, I'm nice and early into the curve, so well ahead of the apex. The car really bogs down there. It's almost 2nd gear, but it is 3rd, I believe, around that one, or it certainly was for me. Keep it in 3rd gear, and then for turn 8 here, I'm just going to do a little blip of brakes just before we get to the tree, just very briefly, and then back on the throttle. And now you're trying to avoid this curbing here. I couldn't make it work going over the curbing. So you're just trying to avoid the curbing, keeping it as close as possible. Think of it a lot like Oran Park, if you think of sort of turns 2 and 3 around there. So I'm just feeling with the throttle, just feathering it and balancing the car, getting back up to full throttle, nice and early. And then we've basically got the same turn again around here. So we've got these turns 7, 8, and 9. A big M on the map here. Now, again, we're going to be braking sort of mid-track. There's no real braking marker. You'll just get a feel for it. I'm going to brake up to 45%, and again, trail it off. And I'm just balancing the car. I'm in 3rd gear, but as the revs drop completely down, I drop it down into 2nd gear. And as I do that, I put a big blip of throttle on. And I'm back on 100% throttle in 2nd gear to try and give me that oomph around the 2nd part of turn 9. Up to 3rd gear. Now I rev it out in 3rd gear here. And again, there aren't really any braking markers over on the right-hand side. You've got the 50-meter marker on the left-hand side. So just after that, I'm going to brake in a straight line again. What's that, up to about 80% in a straight line. I'm going to trail it off as I go looking for the apex in 3rd gear. Just before the apex, I'm starting to get back on the throttle so that when I get to the apex, I'm 100% on throttle, just giving these curbing a kiss, the merest of kisses. Your car will drift out, that's absolutely fine. Make use of the rumble strip. Slowly move over to the left-hand side. I change up to 4th gear here. So at the minute, I've got the wind coming from behind me and from the left, as you can see. And then just before we get to the marshal's post, so basically the next braking marker is midway between the 50-meter on the right and the marshal's post on the left-hand side. And I'm going to brake again up to about 80% in a straight line. I'm going to trail it off. And I'm not actually looking for this apex here because I tend to think if you actually hit the apex of this corner, turn 11, then it makes it much tighter and much more difficult for turn 12. So I'm going to avoid that apex, just straighten the car up. Get nice and wide for your entry to 12 because it's an important corner because we've got the long straight coming up after that. And then just as we exit the rumble strips, I'm going to give it a tiny little blip of brake. And then you just see I'm just balancing the car between the brake and the throttle just to get the rotation that I need to go round. And again, you're just kissing the paint there rather than kissing the curbing. Then over and across the line for what was my best lap, which was a 33.852. Then assert dominance over the rest of the field by parking up on the middle of the grass, having a sandwich, and now we'll run through at full speed from the chase cam. Okay, here we are for the chase cam full speed. Over to the right hand side, looking for the 50-meter marker. Sharp brake, trail, back on the throttle nice and early, over the curbs nice and aggressive. Over to the left hand side, brake in, back on the throttle, slow build up on that one, full lift, back on. Always make sure you're entering nice and wide. Tricky corner, slow trail off. Little brake, just balance it round, getting as close to the curbing as possible. Same again here, but down to second gear. So easy to run wide at the exit of turn 9 there. 50-meter marker, braking a straight line, back on the throttle. Always making use of the full track on entry and exit. 50-meter marker again here, just after that. Hardest that we're going to brake. I ignore that apex so I can get out wide here. And kissing that line. And over and across the line. Right, one more time after this from the cockpit with the driving line back on. Okay, final time with the driving line on. Great, thanks again for watching. I've been Sambo iRacing and I will be back in the week with some more videos. We're going to try and do this in the Ford now. Wish me luck. See you again.